So thank you all so much for being here. I'm so thrilled to get to talk to you. This feels weird to do, but I'm going to spotlight myself and then I will spotlight other people as they get a chance to talk. So I'm Nancy Reddy. I am, along with Emily Perez, one of the co-editors of The Long Devotion, this anthology that we're so excited about and so proud of. And so tonight we have three of our writer contributors to the anthology and then two visual artists. This is an event, as you probably know, in partnership with the Sustainable Arts Foundation, which has done so much to support writers and artists who have kids. They've done a lot to support this project in particular, and we're so grateful for that partnership. Emily is going to be popping links and info into the chat as we go, but I also know that it's really can be overwhelming to keep up with the chat as you're trying to listen to people as well. So we have a Google form if you are interested in getting I promise only one email from us after this, with a handout of like links and information and things. You can put your email into that Google form that I believe, yes, Emily just put into the chat. So if you would like a nice kind of like condensed recap in one email, we will not bother you again after that. You can put your name and thing into that form that Emily just shared, and we'll share it again a couple of times. Okay, so thank you all so much for being here. You can continue to use the chat. Again, I think it's such a nice way of getting to kind of know who all is here, getting to respond to each other's work. The kind of big picture question that we were thinking about in the anthology and that I suspect resonates with our visual artists as well. Is this question about having to, or how to combine caregiving and a creative practice, and how those things are in tension, but also can produce really interesting points of connection or something like that. So we wanted to have a chance to bring together some of the writers from anthology and some visual artists to talk about how those things are connected. I'm going to pass it over to Caroline right now, who can talk a little bit about the work of the Sustainable Arts Foundation. And then we will move to our writers and our artists.
Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you're here. Just super briefly, my husband and I founded Sustainable Arts Foundation in 2010, motivated by a desire to support writers and artists with children. And we do that in three ways: with unrestricted cash grants to artists and writers with children under 18, at least half of whom are people of color. And just this spring, we passed the $1 million milestone in awards to artists and writers, which is amazing. We also support writing and artist residencies that are trying to make their programs more accessible to parents. And we've supported over 65 different organizations so far since we started doing that in 2013. And residencies both in the US and overseas. And then finally, by just trying to create a diverse community of writers and artists with children, and trying to help them feel supported in their work, trying to make their work feel less isolating, less invisible, and ultimately more sustainable. So that's what we do. And I'll turn it back to you, Nancy.
Thank you. So I am going to briefly introduce our first writer, Ramika Bingham-Risher, who is a writer of many things. Emily will share her bio, but I will just share in particular. So I was drawn to Ramika's work. One of the experiences of parenting that we really wanted to make sure that we highlighted in the book was the experience of step parenting. I have a really wonderful stepmother. I've seen my mom be a really involved stepmother with my step sisters. And that seems to me like so obviously a form of mothering, and one that, at least in a lot of things we had read, got kind of like left out of the narrative. So I wanted to make sure that we share that, and Ramika's beautiful poem that's in the anthology speaks really clearly to that. as does a lot of the rest of her work. I'll say one more quick thing, which is that Ramika read for us at an event we had at AWP in Philly this year. And getting to hear her read in person, I'm glad you will get to all hear her, really highlighted how funny she is, which is something I had not quite, and maybe I've oversold it. I should, like, it's a, but I think like sometimes it doesn't, the experience of actually getting to hear someone's work, I think can do so much. And I was really glad to get to hear that. And I'm glad we'll all get to hear her now. So I will duck out and let you take it over.
Hey folks, I hope you didn't oversell it. I mean, good gracious. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. So if folks will give me a heads up and let me know once I put this thing in presenter view, if you can actually see it. You see a picture of a little girl and a boy holding a baby? Yes? Okay, great. All right, well, let's talk a little bit. Once I found out we were going to be with artists who were going to have slides, I freaked out and did some slides. So I'll read some poems, but also I just kind of wanted to talk about this idea of cobbling together a family, right? And then cobbling together our art in times of need. So, thinking about artful tending and then sustainability. I live in Norfolk, Virginia. So that concept comes up a whole lot, as you can imagine, with the environment. But I also think about it in terms of our art and our household. I dropped in some family photos here because I like to be real nosy, and I figure other people do too. And so this is my 7th grade boyfriend and I at junior high graduation, and I'm holding his little brother. The next slide, he'll look kind of familiar because that's the man that I ended up marrying. Now, we lost touch for 15 years, and he found me from my poetry website, and we got married 9 months later. So that's how cobbling together this family came about. So my husband, Michael, and I, you could see my son, Michael, standing next to his dad, looking all cute, even though he's 4 and devious. And my daughter, who was 12 at the time, and my brother-in-law, who's right behind her, that was 16. We all kind of were Addwater instant family when we were together in 2010. We've been married for 12 years now. So cobbling is certainly what we did. It was rough. It was clumsy. It wasn't always happy. And I was trying to figure out how to continue to sustain a writing life while I was figuring out how to be a mother as well. I'm just going to read a little passage of prose, a paragraph from a memoir that I have forthcoming to tell you a little bit about that time. Mothering is fluid practice. Poeting is fluid practice. Sometimes you are so small and the world is so big that you have to write your own history and hold on to it. In A Coronary Artist, Erica Hunt says, one becomes an adult without knowing the details of how it was done. Every time I put pen to page, I am hoping to save myself from forgetting, maybe save others the trouble of lying about what happened later. Worry haunts me now. With age comes responsibility and the assurance that people are nothing if not hungry and misguided. We see that on the news, right? I'm writing for my children's sake more than my own, just like my mother worked the night shift for many years, mostly because I was born. Only grace lets poetry put food on a table, fill a classroom with unexpected fervor, or make us feel as useful as our mothers in our strained, imperfect art. So thinking about some of those things, the way that mothering started filtering into my work was I was seeing metaphors in our life everywhere. Noble and Webster are these brilliant visual artists who kind of think about sustainability, collecting things, and then cobbling them back together to think about human process. This is one of their sculptures. And when I ran across these while I was writing a book of poems about mothering and falling in love and thinking about my own path, these sculptures kept popping into my mind. I won't read the poem that's there just for time, but as you can imagine, it's about the mess of us, right? Like the muck of us and how we continue to hold each other. Um, and so when I think about tending, when I think about like what artful tending means to me, Lucille Clifton's idea of being careful in your writing life and in your mothering life continues to come back to me. Um, the one thing that I was clear about, I think, early on was that for this to work, everything had to become fodder for examination, right? That doesn't mean I'm saying go out and embarrass your kids. But what I'm saying is, the mothering life, just like everything that happened before it, became a really useful and imperative part of my writing life. And when I was asking questions in the work, that didn't mean I didn't love my children and love my life. It just meant I was growing. And then I could pass that same idea on to my children instead of having them be fearful of questioning even the good things that are happening, right? But all of that is for naught if we don't have time for the art. So for me, the one piece of advice I wish somebody would have told me earlier on, so maybe somebody in the audience needs to hear this, is just planning time for your art is imperative, right? Those beginning years, I probably lost more time and more sleep worrying about the art I wasn't creating than just putting 15 minutes on the calendar every morning and sitting down to write, right? Even if you only get in 2 hours a week, and even if those are stretched out, that's more than 100 hours a year, my goodness. So who you are as an artist makes you a better caregiver, and learning to be a caregiver makes you a more careful artist. Right? But expect chaos, right? In any household. This is a family photo too, believe it or not. We were car 29 in a 69 car pileup. That's my little red truck in the back they're trying to pull out. We were all right. But the other thing, the other thing I wish somebody would have told me was that my creative life was going to push up against my caregiving life and things were going to fall through the cracks. And I should have just forgiven myself for the things that did right off the bat, right? And that's one thing, I'd like to remind you all too. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit and read kind of a final poem to help us think about sustainability. When we're thinking about the environment, of course, we're thinking about the way that we can make our planet sustainable for others, but I'm thinking about environment as our households. How can it be one that's vital, that's healthy, even though our resources are finite? What can we pass on to our children and grandchildren? And I think with time, my children seeing me as an artist who took care to make sure to include my art made them understand that they could take care to follow whatever passion they were interested in as well, right? So, these are some snapshots of that, but these communities that hold you accountable, like Sustainable Arts, like, the Long Devotion Anthology, those are the communities to tap into. So here we are in December. You can see my mom part two. Their mom is in the second picture, so we've come a long way. And I'm just going to finish with the poem that's in the anthology. We see the Lion King on Broadway. I enter the pride. Our girl is telling the boys to pose near the theater doors. We have traveled to the Minskoff in New York, and the children are finally elated. They have been trying to teach me their ways. They wrestle and weary one another, bending and binding love, but I am useless in my tenderness. Until this, I have orchestrated the day trip of dreams. Herald Square gleams like a lost enchantress. As we scuttle and preen, she tries pashminas and caps, designer shades, everything neon at once. When our tickets have been taken and they step into the circle, for a flash of moment, she takes the journey in. It is only a measure before the music starts. While we head to our seats, she says, "This is amazing. All you've done to get us here. It must have taken hours, years, I think, years." But she is grateful, and I am finally useful. As the curtain goes up, everything the light touches is ours. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for that beautiful reading. I love hearing you read. And thanks for all those words of wisdom. I am already planning on asking you for your slide deck so we can put those things in the notes that we send out to people afterwards. But so much good advice in there. The next reader we have is also a really talented visual artist, and I don't know how all these things are possible in one human being. I first became acquainted with Lauren Haldeman's work when I was screening for the Colorado Prize. And I felt pretty smart when Lauren Haldeman's work was chosen by the judge as the winner of the Colorado Prize. I'd like to take a little credit for that. But of course, it's all Lauren Haldeman. So when Nancy and I were putting together this anthology, I immediately thought of Lauren and was looking around because I knew Lauren had visual poetry as well. And when I found the piece in the Bat City Review, it was just immediate. Like, this is the piece we have to have in the book. One of our goals in the book was to have a range of aesthetic diversity, as well as a diversity of authors and topics and stages in life, et cetera, et cetera. And Lauren's work is just stunning, and I'm glad we're going to see it tonight and hear more from Lauren. So thanks for being here, Lauren.
Thanks for having me. And I don't know how to follow that up. That was incredible. So I will try. My name's Lauren Haldeman. I draw and write and make comics and all of these things. And all of that stopped when I had a baby, almost in its tracks. Motherhood was a shock to me. I grew up sort of as a tomboy. I grew up basically on the gender spectrum, very much like a boy. And so when I got pregnant, it was a shock. And when I had a baby, it was a shock. And I didn't feel natural at it at all. I know that there are a lot of mothers that where it just comes naturally. I'm on the other end of the spectrum where every day was a steep learning curve and I felt completely out of place. And so a lot of the poetry and the comics that I started making were about that strange location that we land in when we have this new human being in our house. I remember the doctors telling me that she didn't know the difference between night and day. And I was kind of insulted by that, almost like, really, you don't know the difference between night and day? Just weird things like how you have to put gloves on their hands or they scratch their face. I mean, just this sort of pterodactyl living in my house. And so basically I spent the first 6 months or so trying to figure out how to be a mother. And then I started trying to write about it in tiny periods during the day. I would try to write in a notebook page about this tall and this wide each day, and poems started coming out of that. I'll show you all the one that's in the book right now. Let me share my screen. So this one is the one that we have in the collection. This is a poem I wrote sort of needing to build up my own confidence about being a mom and needing to just understand where I was at and that I did have the strength to do it. So I'll read it. I'm your mom. I'm your mom. I step up. I attach a papier-mâché wolf head to my head. I tie fur to my back. I'm your mom now. A pine tree carved into a bantam. A strong wind holding up an animal. I am your mom. You don't have to test your hold. You can use the vines. You can pull yourself up by my teeth. I am your mom. A heliotrope and plasma pile. Steady, weather passing me. This is my job. I'm your mom. I am astronaut, helmeted raven. I am neutrons, plum pits, core mantle, metallurgy. Baby, you can pull yourself up by my teeth. So that you can see here, this is very early on in my comic making career. I actually painted this on paper. Now I use an iPad and I use a program called Procreate with an Apple Pencil, and it has cut my the workflow time down. Used to take me, I would probably say 10 to 12 hours to make one of these comics. And now I can make one in about 2 hours. So a big reduction in the time needed. And I didn't have very much time back then, but this is what I was doing with the time that I had, is trying to figure out what motherhood was, and trying to do it through my art. I spent a lot of time in the first year of motherhood, especially just just boiling in resentments of all the people that were out in the world doing art and publishing books. And I was sitting at home with this little baby with no idea of what was happening. I wrote another poem I'll show you all. Let me bring it up. This is a poem called Jealous that I wrote. It's sort of, this poem's kind of indicative of the sort of trapped feeling I was feeling as a new mother. The feeling that I was that I had lost my chance to ever become a writer or an artist. You know, motherhood is portrayed so often in our society as this, it's the only thing you do, it's the only thing you can do, it's the only thing you should do. A mother is all encompassing. And so it took me a long time to get out of that mindset as well, and remember I can also be a writer, I can also be an artist. But I'll read this one and then I will finish up. So this is called Jealous. I saw your book and I was jealous. I ate your eggs and I was jealous. You told me about your family, how they rented a houseboat, how they fought. I was jealous of the houseboat. I was jealous of your gift-giving abilities when you gave me a gift. I was jealous of your sunglasses, your armature, your raspberries, your beach umbrella. I was jealous of your kindness when you said it was okay to be jealous. I was jealous all day long, through the mid-afternoon storm, as the assemblage in the yard went all citrus and cardinal. The only time I wasn't jealous, I was napping. So that's sort of the way my work went as soon as I became a mother. And I could see the drawing and the writing as a way to sort of interpret what was happening to me in the moment, and figuring out what kind of mother I was going to be, and how the relationship between me and my daughter, and the relationship between me and my work too. So thank you for having me.
Okay, so now Lauren's a good transition to our visual artists, but their work is super different. And so I'm excited to introduce you first to Elisa Ciclianos Carter. One of the reasons I wanted to introduce these two artists and have these two particular women participate is because their work is big. It gives the lie to the notion that motherhood requires an artist to work small. Elisa makes mixed media pieces at a great scale, like 7 to 10 feet, sometimes even bigger, and it's rich and gorgeous. She layers inks and acrylics with mica and glitter. and lots of gold and silver foil. Your time spent as a art teacher comes through in your work. So it all just sparkles with energy and light. And I long to see it in person and not just mediated by the screen, but one of these days. And Elisa, I realize, has now aged out of SAF because her child is over 18. So congratulations. It's a bittersweet milestone. So far, we've only met online via Zoom studio visit, but I'm hoping we can meet in person soon. And in the meantime, I'm really excited to introduce you all to Elisa and to hear about her work.
Thank you, Caroline. And I'm excited to meet you in person and for you to see my work as well.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So I'm Elisa. I'm a painter. I'm from upstate New York, and I'm a mom of a now 18-year-old, if you can believe it, which I can't believe it. And that's why I say that. And I'm going to show you some of my work, and I can talk about that a little bit. And then, and also sort of talk about my journey as a mother and an artist. What am I doing? I'm going to share the screen. And let me see here. So I'll start with my first work, which is my child. I will take this opportunity to be very proud and obsessed with my 18-year-old. And then, I want to do slide view, right? Can you see that? Okay, cool. So this is, and I'm just showing you because I love her and adore her. This is Aurora, my kid. I had her when I was 20. And on the left, that's her when she's probably just a year. I think it's her first birthday, actually. And then on the right, I think she's like 15 or something. And I don't ever, sometimes I do actually show pictures, but I rarely, when I'm doing presentations, most people don't know I'm a mom, I think. So it's like really nice to just, be very upfront about that. And then, and that's her again, like her 12th birthday maybe. And then on the right when she was almost 18. So I came to this journey of motherhood and art making, like in a sort of, I would say, backwards way, or it wasn't backwards, but I think that most people think they'll do the art and then they'll have kids. And I instead had her at 20, very young, which felt like very young for me. And I've always been an artist since I was very little, but I really didn't see art making as something that I could sustain myself on. And when I went to college when I was 18, I didn't take any art classes. I just was like, I'm going to do something else that's more viable. And then I left college after a year, and then I had a baby pretty much like a year after that. And throughout her whole life, I wish I had planned better, because I would have brought in some images of, like, I used to make her puppets, and I'd make these like kind of posters of her and I and little books for her. But I tried to implement art in all these different ways. And the way that I financially supported myself was by doing childcare. So I was caring for other people's children, I was caring for my child, and then also incorporating sort of art into her life. And then also I did preschool teaching when she was really little at a Democratic school in Albany. And so and then there's like lots of art involved in that as well. And it wasn't until I was like 27 and I went back to school, and it took me like in total 6 years to get my bachelor's, that I realized that actually art is like what I needed. That was the thing that I was supposed to do. And I thought about being an art therapist, but I just really wanted to just be by myself and make art. It was like, I didn't want to have to interact with people. I wanted to get to just go all in and have that time alone. And so I finished up my bachelor's in art after many years of trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I got my master's the next year. And so while I was in undergrad and grad school, I started to create this body of work, which is an ongoing, never-ending, limitless, in all the ways I can say it, body work based on this mythology that centers on this idea of Black people's bodies responding to racism and white supremacy. And so I saw them as like protective sort of deities, aliens, ancestors, like this mixture of this like transforming human hybrid. And so these are the kind of initial and really at the core of my work, what I call them crowns, and they're these initially these collages of hair imagery of Black hair, Black people's hair, that I've made into these new sort of, again, crowns or heads of these beings. So and this is like the glitter that Caroline was referring to. I adorn them, I hand embellish them with glitter and mica and abalone shell and micaceous iron oxide, and become these new beings. And so that started in undergrad, and then I sort of really fleshed it out fully in grad school, which I was in for 1 year. I got my master's. And this, you know, when I think about it in relation to parenting, I feel like I don't know, yeah, like so much energy went into parenting, especially, I mean, now still, it doesn't end. So sorry to say, or not sorry, it's always ongoing. But I really felt like when I found art again, like I had found it when I was younger and even throughout Aurora's childhood, but when I really found it for myself, like the floodgates just opened, and the amount of sort of energy and care that I had for this work and I had for myself, really, like it had been building up, and I really needed something else to give to, and I wasn't doing that. I was doing childcare, as I said, and I didn't really love doing that. Like it was fine, but it wasn't my greatest joy at all. So, and then I worked in a movie theater for 10 years as well. So, and that was cool, and it allowed me to go to residencies and different things, but it also still wasn't like what I wanted to be doing forever. So it just, I was sort of surprised by how much I had in me when I started to make this work and really commit to making art. And it was like that. I was like, okay, I'm going to be an artist at like 30, you know, and people were like, okay, cool. And my friends and loved ones, they didn't doubt me, but they weren't really sure, you know, what that meant. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to live off of this. And which felt like really a lot to be, you know, an adult and saying that and trying that and kind of just taking that leap, which absolutely was also inspired by Aurora, because I really wanted to show her that that was possible, that like following your sort of your gifts and your path could, and like really giving it that attention could be successful. I mean, obviously, like it's like the lottery, like winning ticket of like becoming an artist who can live off of their work is like, it's really challenging. And I feel very grateful that I've, I don't know, have this privilege, but also, even if I wasn't like making money off of it, I would still want to it's just so important for my mental health, for my spirit, for all of that. And so I really wanted to show that to Aurora. These are, quickly, I'll show you the larger paintings, again, that Caroline was referring to, where I incorporate these crowns into these beings whom I call Afronauts, who are the people from now, Black people who have gone through this transformation, this protective, divine technology, sacred adaptation, and we leave Earth and we go to this like abundant, beautiful world where we are safe from all harm, and we are loved and protected. And so these are examples of, these are earlier paintings that I did in grad school, but of these works. And another thing, so as a parent, I didn't do residencies until Aurora was 12. I have a partner who I've been with for 11 years almost. And I was able, I mean, I would have figured it out, I guess, if I was single, but they were like the main reason I was able to go off to my first residency. And when Aurora was 12, and she was older, I have like friends and family who have done residencies when their kids are a bit younger, but that was really important and really helpful to have that time away and to go away from parenting. I mean, I missed her so much, and I miss my partner as well, but to go and have that time. And so this piece was, the majority of it was finished at a residency. And so that's like a really important way that I've been able to sustain my practice, and also, and then come back and kind of like give all this energy and come back and be with like kind of a binge purge situation when I don't have a studio at home. That's a detail from that larger work. And then these are examples of the crowns, but like I call them Afrocosmos, these larger scale printed braid images that are more like underwater creatures or celestial beings or planets forms. And they're all adorned with glitter. And then these are more paintings of these future ancestors. These are on linen with velvet. I really love just really lush, like opulent material. So anything that's glittery or metallic or velvety, or I mean, and then matte as well. I love playing with surface in that way. And there's more, like you can learn more about sort of like the worlds that I'm describing in these images, but for now, I can just show you, just give you a quick little idea. I think, there's more. So this is, I'll just like give them a little plug. I have a show up right now. I'm in Chicago. These are works that are up right now in Chicago that I recently did. And they're sort of diving deeper into the world and the story of these beings that I've created. It's funny, I can't see anyone or hear anything, but I assume that everyone can see and hear me. I hope.
We can.
Okay.
I want you to say we can.
Thank you. Just like, hello. These are just like quite different, but these really lovely, like textural, more abstract works that I'm really excited about, and I work on periodically, just because I usually work, my stuff is very abstract, but like in the figure. So I got really excited and I could kind of step away from that and get more into material. So there's like a wide range, you see, like of the way that I work. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, but it's all under the umbrella of this mythology. So everything that you see is a part of this world that I'm creating. And I think that is it for the, how do I do this? How do I stop sharing? Does anyone know?
You got it? Maybe.
Pause, share more. Oh, stop. Great. Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Please
And
read
now
the
you
chat
take a
because
minute.
people love your work so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I will. I know, I had no idea. I was like, no one's saying anything. Everyone left the room. Okay.
We're
Yeah.
just quietly absorbing it
I
all.
appreciate that.
But yeah, scroll through the chat now because it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you absorb all your praise while I introduce Catherine, whose work you will see is also often quite big. Catherine makes paintings, but also public commissions. So she's had work on sidewalks and in and outside of buildings. And once, was it last summer or 2 summers ago, even wrapped around a Washington, D.C. recycling truck which must have been amazing to see. I wish the city of San Francisco would wrap their trash trucks in beautiful artwork. But I really love that you can see Catherine's work outside the gallery space, because some of her work is also made outside, and maybe she'll talk about that. As you'll see, it's really colorful and bright and energetic. It just gives me life like Elisa's does, but unlike the kind of controlled symmetries that you saw in Elisa's work, Catherine's work often kind of threatens to just go bounding out of the frame in a way that I really love. I've been lucky enough to meet Catherine twice in person when she's come to San Francisco to show her work. And just last month, I even got to meet her husband and young children when they accompanied her to the show. And we had a real SAF moment when she was standing in front of a painting introducing her work, and her young daughter is like lying on the floor of the gallery coloring. It was just so perfect and beautiful, and like just the picture of a multitasking artist mom, and you did it beautifully. So I'm so happy that you all now get to meet Catherine and hear a little bit about her work.
I think she was coloring on the floor and also kind of fussing a little bit and embarrassing me in my solo show opening, which is very typical, and I think everybody can relate to that experience where children are sort of well behaved, but not really, and it's all you can kind of ask for. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled and honored to be speaking alongside such talented artists and poets. It's really a privilege to be in this group of people. Let me see if I can share my screen. How do I like make the whole thing big? I don't actually know. Can you see the image?
Yeah, we can.
Catherine,
Yes.
in Keynote, go to that play. You're right under it. See where it says play?
That's why
Click
it
on
was
that.
like
Yep.
hidden by
There.
my
Yep.
Zoom panel. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I'm an artist, painter. I do some installation work, some public art, murals. I'm based in DC, and I am mom to a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. So my kids are small, and I wanted to show work. I'm gonna show you some slides that kind of go backward in time, starting with work that is pretty current and what I'm thinking about right now, and then moving to work that I did when I was first with, where I had a baby or I was pregnant, when I was, just kind of starting out on this journey, and then work from before I had kids. I feel like a lot of people ask me how my work has changed since having kids, and I'm not really sure of what the answer to that question is, but maybe you guys can tell me. I've always been interested in making these I think of these pieces as landscape affiliated, related to landscape painting, related to abstraction, but not fully one or the other. I was originally trained as a traditional sumi ink painter, like when I was a teenager. I'm half Taiwanese, and I grew up moving around when I was a kid, and I lived in various parts of East Asia a lot as a child, and my family lived in Taiwan, so I'd always go back to Taiwan, and that's where I originally learned how to paint. So my whole idea of what painting can be kind of revolves around this Chinese canon of landscape painting. And that canon is a very immersive one. The whole idea of creating spaces that feel cinematic, and that you can lose yourself in. That's what I want to do when I make my work. And so that's why I often work very large. So like this piece right here, this was a piece that was shown at the Krieger Museum, which is a small museum here in DC. But it's like 30 feet long. So that when you're viewing it, you kind of move through the space physically. And size, Caroline mentioned, talking about size and kids, and if that has kind of changed with having kids. And for me, it has not. I think I've probably gotten bigger since having kids. I actually find it easier to work really large than it is to work small. There's more room for mistakes. You don't have to plan everything. There's things my work is very maximalist. So if it's big, then it can encompass even more. And that has definitely not changed since having kids. The hours that I take to do it have changed for sure. But the size has probably only grown. This is a public commission. It's in a lobby of a condo in Maryland. It's probably, I don't know, actually 40 feet maybe in length, and maybe 15 feet in height. My work is really process oriented. It often, at least recently, has started to incorporate those very same traditional Sumi Ink studies that I did when I was a kid or a teenager. Like you can actually see the same studies that I did as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old in Taiwan. I found a cache of these in my parents' basement and started collaging them back into my current work now that I'm almost 40. And having my two selves together in one space, in one painting space, you can see that the collage element is at the top of this piece. I really loved that I was collaborating with my younger self and kind of acknowledging this extremely traditional way that I was originally trained, but then placing it into this expansive, kaleidoscopic, hybrid, fractured world that I constantly want to be developing. All of these pieces, they start with a chance operation. They start with just taking paper, laying it on the floor, pouring diluted Sumi ink or diluted acrylics onto the paper and allowing that to dry. So it's something that it starts out with something that the artist's hand has very little to do with. It has much more to do with evaporation and gravity. But then I come back into that dried pour and insert these extremely different abstract languages and have them butt up against one another. And there's a lot of decorative elements. There's references, they're very natural. There's a lot of imagery of leaves. And that kind of difference is what I'm interested in. I want these pieces to be incongruous and to kind of have this vibration or dissonance within them. These are all pieces from a solo show that's up right now in San Francisco, the show where I got to see Caroline. That piece, that show is going to be up until the end of the month. And I think the nice thing about working this way, working in a very process-oriented way, embracing chaos, is that also as a parent, you also have to embrace chaos, right? So there's this kind of wonderful parallel, I think, between my working life and my parenting life. And they're both extremely frustrating and messy and cobbled together. I think I love the phrase of cobbling things together, because that is so much what we're doing as parents. We're trying to struggle through a life that we only half know what we're doing most of the time. And then we're finding some joy in that. And that's what I would like to do in my painting practice as well. I mean, that's the goal, at least, to kind of celebrate our fracturedness and our imperfections. And that's actually really beautiful. And I think that that is so much what parenting is. Before I had kids, I think I spent a lot more time thinking about the right decision or the wrong decision in making the work. And I just got faster after having kids. I think I just stopped worrying so much. I just didn't have the luxury to. So I'm gonna get into some of these are all, it's going closer and closer to having kids, or not having kids. Sorry, I'm going backwards. So like this piece right here, I did when the kids were toddlers. This is a piece about Facebook headquarters in DC. And here you can see my 5-year-old is a little infant laying on the floor with my husband. So it's all just, I don't think that I was kind of, my trajectory of having kids, I basically had, I went a more traditional route. I think I got an MFA, started teaching as an adjunct, making work. Then basically what happened is I got pregnant by accident. I hadn't planned for it. I had thought it would be something that I might do someday in the far distant future, and then it just kind of happened. And it was a shock to me too. I think Lauren mentioned the idea of it being a shock. And I spent my first pregnancy being very depressed and really negative about what motherhood was going to be like for me. I think that in the art world, there is this stereotype or narrative that once you have a baby, your career is over. And I am ashamed to say that I bought into that narrative. I can remember being a younger artist who didn't have kids, and then hearing that, hearing that like a friend was pregnant and thinking, oh, that's the end of her career, which I'm now like really ashamed to say that I thought that, because essentially what that was sexism. It was just chauvinism that I had internalized. It was this idea that a successful artist is an artist who doesn't have any strings attached and can just go into their studio and not be a part of their community and not be a part of their family and have nothing to worry them except for their art. And I think that was just kind of in the air that I was breathing. And it was the reason why I felt pretty negative about having a baby. This is what my work looked like before. By the way, I'm getting into like, this is before kids. So this is like a piece from right after grad school. This was the last piece that I made. I actually finished installing this piece when I was 7 months pregnant with my first child. And I think that narrative that I bought into of like, well, that's, I guess I can't do any more art because I'm just going to be a mom now. That was this really toxic narrative that's just kind of in the world in general, and particularly in the art world. And then it was also confounded by, I think on either side of me having my first child, a year before and a year after, within that 2-year span, I had been represented by, I had a gallery in New York, a gallery in Los Angeles, one in London, one in Toronto, and one in DC. And within that 2-year time frame, all of those galleries, except for the Toronto one, went out of business. So that it just felt like, oh, I guess I thought it might be the end of my art making. But it wasn't at all. It definitely wasn't. I think that, like, looking through that time frame that I just showed you, I mean, I hope my work is better now than it was in the beginning. And since then, my kids are 7 and 5 now. I believe that I've made the best work of my life alongside of them, with them. This is my studio when I had a living room studio. This was my living room. There's my daughter playing trains just on top of the paintings. The kids engage with the work or they ignore the work, and I engage them in my practice or I ignore them. It kind of, there's many different modes of engagement, including ignoring one another. This is my studio now with my daughter just doing something, I don't know. I've never had childcare. It's not something that I could afford until school. DC fortunately has a universal pre-K3, but also that pre-K3 happened during COVID. So much of that pre-K3 was on a computer, which was not very useful. But yes, they've engaged either by just kind of living with me as I teach them that having a creative life is just kind of in the air that we breathe. They engage by being a part of the literal process. Like, these are all sea glass that my kids gathered that then went into a public art commission of a mosaic that's now in an elementary school in DC. So they made that, or they partly made it. I mean, mostly I made it, but they helped. That pour that I refer to, they make the pours sometimes. It's really easy to make a pour. That's the process. And this piece actually that Calvin, my 7-year-old, is making right here, that was curated into a show that a friend of mine curated of artists' kids, the kids of artists and their work. It ended up looking like this. The big piece is Calvin's piece, and the little ones are mine, and those went into a show at the Longwood Center of the Arts in Farmville. So, you know, they had their first group exhibition at 5 and 7. Caroline also mentioned the public work. This was I do some community work as well. So this was a community, I didn't realize that this was so sped up, sorry. It's a sidewalk mural. And my kids, alongside of dozens of other random children, made this sidewalk mural. So sometimes the way they engage in the work is literally by being a part of the practice, but not necessarily. There's definitely plenty of room for us to just ignore one another. And then the last way I think that we engage with these two separate spheres, or not separate spheres of my life, are not separate, is having an art practice or having a creative practice is a boon, is a privilege to me and to my kids. I've been lucky enough to do residencies that are family friendly, that have not only allowed my children to come, but welcomed it. This is my studio at the Wasaic Project, which is one of those residencies that the Sustainable Arts Foundation gave a grant to. And this is my studio at the Good Heart Artist Residency in Michigan. And I think Bill and Sue are here on this call right now. They're the founders of that residency. And that residency not only encourages you to bring your work and your kids, but it also gave me a stipend to bring along a friend who I could pay for her to have a plane ticket to fly out to Michigan and help me take care of my kids this entire time. And then the last slide, I just wanted to show this image. I love this image because this is a residency that a friend of mine named Amy Hughes Braden created in Washington, D.C., where she partnered with a nonprofit, took over their gallery space, and instead of having an exhibition, she turned the gallery space into a residency for parents and their kids, divided the gallery space in half, got a grant to get a caregiver for kids, and our kids were in half of the studio space with a big curtain between, so we didn't have to see each other. The caregiver spent all day with the kids. The parents worked on the other side of the space, but we could hear the kids. And it was just a really beautiful thing. And we were able to make so much work and also be still in our kids' lives. And it just seems like, why doesn't that happen all the time? It's shocking how difficult that can sometimes be. Our society certainly doesn't make it easy on us. But that's something that I've been really fortunate to find, those communities. That's just kind of where I wanted to leave it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Wow. So I will introduce.
Oh, I don't know how to stop sharing. Sorry. Am I still sharing? Sorry.
It's at the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry
All
about
right, there we go. Rachel, thank you all so much. This has been amazing to hear about people's practices. So I'll introduce our last reader, Rachel Zucker, who is the author of many, many, many books across many genres. I think of Rachel as being like the mother of the mother poets, at least, and that lineage goes back way longer, but her work has been really important to me in my thinking about writing and mothering. I feel like, Rachel, I've spent like probably hundreds of hours with you via Commonplace, like listening back and forth to these conversations. And I'm so grateful for that work. And if there are folks here who do not know Commonplace, Rachel's amazing podcast, you should really listen to it. She reads more deeply and like thinks more carefully about the work of the people she talks to than I think like anyone else doing a podcast now. Yeah. And her amazing necklace. So read her bio that is in the thing. She has a new book of critical nonfiction coming out with Wave next year. I don't think you can pre-order it just yet, but be on the lookout for that. And I'll turn it over to Rachel.
This has been just amazing to listen to everyone. I am going to start my timer and then just talk for a few minutes real quick and then read from a poem that I know is too long to read. And I'm just going to stop when the timer goes off, and we're all going to have the frustration and disappointment that we feel constantly as parents when we are interrupted and not allowed to finish. I just wanted to say that, you know, I have 3 sons and they are almost 23, 21, and about to turn 15. And the poem that I'm going to read is from my book, Museum of Accidents, when my older boys were probably 2 and 3 years old. And I always wanted to be a mother. Like my mother was an artist, and I didn't want to be an artist. I didn't want to be a writer. I wanted to be a mother. And when I also was an artist though. And when I became a mother, it was both a pleasure and really a constant torment to feel pulled between those two things. And when I think about the first, let's say 20 years of my life, like from 1999 to 2019, what I thought was that the only job I was doing, that my job was to keep the children alive. And I did that. You know, a few years ago, no, not even a few years ago, a few months ago, about 8 months ago, when I was going through a divorce, and I'd just had I had a hysterectomy. I was going through perimenopause and menopause. I was having a very crushing mood shift. The pandemic did not help. And my life-saving friend, Lauren, who you just saw and heard, said to me on the phone, "You have one job, and it's to stay alive." And it was such a kind of bizarre and fascinating moment for me to think about how at that moment in my life, having kept these children alive, and that this job had shifted to keeping myself alive, I now feel like I'm doing a really good job. I'm happy to talk about this to anybody who wants to, but my mood is back on track and I'm doing much, much better. I have no idea though what my job is anymore. And that's a really, really interesting thing. In some ways, I feel like I've come so far from the concerns of early motherhood, some of which you'll hear in this piece. And yet this morning I had the really kind of amazing experience of my newly beloved was over today visiting me, and he and I and my 21-year-old son played a long board game together, and it was the first time we'd spent that much time together, the three of us, and I felt like this was a great success. Unfortunately, very soon after that, we realized that my newly beloved had COVID. So then I realized my son had been exposed to COVID. I've been exposed to COVID. And this is an interesting parenting challenge as I become yet again in charge of keeping everybody alive and myself and everybody happy. Okay, this piece is called Paying Down the Debt, Happiness. At the end of my second book is a poem about my second son's birth called Here Happy is No Part of Love. It's a raw poem full of the sounds and smells and terrors of labor, and going to a place I swear I could not go. Going there again, going unwillingly, surviving to build a nest with shards of glass. Happiness, the poem says, is a frail, wispy emotion that has no part in the fierce love of birth and motherhood. Happiness can't touch the molten heart of motherhood. Happiness is irrelevant to these maternal fires. And by the way, I wasn't, as if that mattered, happy. By the way, didn't want, at least so soon, another child. Well, at readings, people are always tisk-tisking, although mothers are also nodding and sometimes crying. But at least one person from every audience comes up to me and says, "You'll pay for that. Someday he'll grow up and read that and you'll pay." So I'm working away on a book of prose, a nonfiction book about motherhood, a mommoir, as they call it in that already saturated momlit pub market. And I'm suffering through every word of this goddamn book, yelling at the computer and lying on the bed and generally carrying on. Meanwhile, because it is nonfiction, I'm caught in a weird hell of having to live my life twice every day. Struggle through the writing of my life, and then the kids come home and I have to take care of them and have had a bad writing morning and feeling like a failure. And no, I do not want to do a Batman puzzle. And no, I do not want to watch you fold another paper airplane. And no, I do not want to play knights or superheroes or Star Wars or Legos. Please stop hitting your brother, or I'm going to take those lightsabers away. I don't have the yogurt that turns blue because I didn't go to the grocery store because I was writing. Anyway, I'm not going to buy that yogurt that turns blue because it's gross. It's gross because it's not natural. It has preservatives. Preservatives are chemicals they put food in to make it stay longer. stay good longer, but we should eat foods that are fresh and don't have preservatives. There are dyes and chemicals in that, and I'm not getting it because it's disgusting. Yeah, well, Ava's mom is not your mom. Yeah, blueberries are blue, but they're blue naturally. No, I don't have blueberries because I didn't go to the grocery store, and anyway, they're not in season now. In season means that fruits and vegetables grow at certain times of year, and now it's March, and almost no berries grow this time of year. No, I don't have strawberries. No, yogurt doesn't have a season. Look, I'm going to make dinner now, noodles, because that's what we have, and I didn't go to the grocery store because I was writing. The next morning, hurry them to school, come home because I have a schedule and this book is not getting done on its own. There is never a time to write. I want to write it. And the grocery store will have to wait. We have frozen peas and noodles and I suffer through another 1,000 words, keeping to the schedule. Then to school, gather them home and try to speak to them kindly, but feeling like my skin is too tight. I'm the mother in smothered. Motherhood has taken my eye and smothered her to smithereens. I'm bothered, hot, lusty, restless. Then it happens. My son, Moses, looks up at me all pink-cheeked and sweet-faced, and I know. By evening, I can feel his fever across the room. Nighttime, he is nuclear, radiant, a febrile jewel emitting a strange honeyed smell. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, there is no more writing. We are smothered together. No more school, smother. No more schedule, smothered. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I read him every King Arthur book in the library. At night, dream of sweet adultery with Gawain, Lancelot, Griflet, Tristram, Pellinor, and several Saxon kings. I refuse only Galahad, as he is far too pure for me, and no one blames me. It's my destiny. Finally, says Merlin, stroking my brow, thanks to you, there is peace in Britain. When I wake up, I am sick. I am a flame-breathing dragon, and for my sins of the flesh, my flesh is punished. Moses goes to school, and I am left to sweat and shiver through the day. Friday, Saturday, my mother is in Vietnam, my father and stepmother. Oh my God. My son just asked if I was available. No, I'm not available. My husband is the world's greatest heroine for taking the children to a birthday party, to the park, then a movie, so I can, abandoned at home, burn at the stake in privacy. Bed, bath, bed, bath, bed, bed, tea, bed, bed, bath, my head, my chest, my eyes, my skin. At 6 p.m., the front door lock turns. All hail the retreating armies. Gas, the husband bungles. Gas, gas. I can smell it down the hall. I stagger forth and with my hoarse voice say, you know, I am really sick of your hyperbolic, psychosomatic, hypochondriacal bullshit. And the house is filled with gas. Sylvia Plath gas. You can't smell it? Smell? But when I enter the kitchen, I see it's true. I've left the gas sans flame running for at least 3 hours. The husband darts room to room, opening windows, glaring. At least the kids weren't home, I say. The four of us go sit in the hallway for half an hour while the neighbors sniff and stare accusingly. Sunday morning, I wake in a cold sweat. Fever breaks. I'm smothered. The husband stayed up late playing online poker and has a stomach ache. Recently, we have stopped fighting in couples therapy about online poker because we've stopped going to couples therapy because my son has stopped going to school and all our babysitters are in foreign countries. Smother, smother. So I say, so sorry about your stomach. Maybe you shouldn't have stayed up so late. And he, don't make this about poker. And I, okay. And we go to bed. And 1 hour later, we hear, Dad, 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 Dad. And you know, of course, it is the faint, frail voice of my younger son. My God, there will be no schedule, nor writing, nor sleep. The creep Dad yells, go back to sleep. Don't yell at him, I yell. Don't yell at me, he yells. And Abram has 102. The Muppet Show is too singy. The Jungle Book is too quiet. The Lion King is too loudly. The Super Friends are so boring. Star Wars is too fighty. He will not let me sleep. Please, he will not let me. I hold him in my arms and pace up and down and back and forth through the long minutes of Monday, while other children of other mothers are going to school, while other mothers are doing what other mothers are doing. And I know I am not alone in the path I furrow in the rug of mourning, and all over the world, mothers are back and forth with babes in arms, and I call out to them in a smothered whisper, and the morning shifts just a bit, like steam coming off a long highway on a hot day, the world straining a bit under the silent weight of my comrade in arms' response, heavy. He is 4 years old, I tell the other mothers. I am trying to make him comfortable, but he is not a baby. I have no breast. He will take nothing, drink, nor eat, nor song, nor sleep. Mothers, I call out. It is Monday, and still Monday, and my arms are not so strong anymore. I put him in the stroller, for someone will need to pick up Moses. Abram falls instantly to sleep. The day creeps on. Out on Broadway, I walk the minutes away. I sit down on a hydrant in the winter sun to rest, just rest, feel that sun on me. I think, I have never been outside before. Is it possible? I think I've been forever in mortal combat with the computer, or deep in a hospital with the infernal fetal monitor, a wizard's drumbeat marching us on, and in the school with its gray light, and the grocery store with people feeding and buying food about to go bad or filled with chemicals, or in bookstores to give readings, or in libraries touching the acetate spines like holy tablets for a story to save us, and in the sick room where me and Charlotte Perkins Gilman are stroking each other's damp brows, goading each other on. But here on Broadway, slumped in the sun on the hydrant, I feel for one moment free, warm, happy. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Okay, so I am going to attempt to talk and add everyone to spotlights. This is amazing, guys. I feel like, and you all can correct me if you think, I feel like you all spoke like so clearly to so many of the questions that I felt like I had about like mothering and creative practice and how all of these things go together and don't. And I feel like I have a lot to think about in terms of ways of thinking about mothering and making art and how those things can go together. So I guess in our remaining like maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I wonder if you all have questions or like additional follow-ups for each other. feel like I saw so many points of connection, like the idea of size and scale and taking up space and bringing your kids into your art, which I really loved.
Yeah, definitely. I loved hearing many of you talk about bringing your kids into your art or just letting them witness your art. And people ask us all the time what the name of our foundation means. And somebody today asked me for like information about recycled materials. And I was like, that is not what we're about. It's literally about showing a creative life as a sustainable thing. My dad was a writer. I would see him sit down. I mean, he's an Episcopal priest, but he's a writer. And I would see him sit down every Friday to write a sermon. And my husband's dad was a painter, and he grew up, in his dad's studio. And I think it was really important for us to see creativity regularly in our homes, like a normal thing. And I love that many of you spoke to that it's important to show that to our children. They need to see that.
Oh my goodness. Well, maybe that's a really beautiful note to end on. Emily, if you would put the Google form in the chat one more time, if folks are interested, we would love to. I feel like there's been all kinds of great things in the chat and good information. So if you are interested in getting kind of like a cleaned up, encapsulated version of that with like information for you can learn more about all of our writers and artists, we would love to send you one email. It'll just be one. But you can pop your info into that Google form. Thank you all so much, writers and artists, for being with us. Thank you, Caroline and Tony. And the Sustainable Arts Foundation for all that you do to make all of this possible and all of the things that you do. And thank you all, everyone else, so much for being here with us. It's amazing to get to hear about this kind of creative practice. And I appreciate getting to spend this time with you. And I appreciate that you all spent this time with us. So thank you so much. And we will say good night. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.